so I appreciate it. So quick question, because I know you guys, hopefully you saw, we don't have the slide here, but I'm working for the Federal Reserve, so the Federal Reserve of Boston more specifically. So, and you got to participate with me a little bit to help me figure out what it is, the things you want to hear or learn from me while you got me for a little bit. How many of you have seen It's a Wonderful Life around Christmas time? Black and white? Okay. There is a bank examiner in that, right? An old crotchety guy that comes in and gives him a bunch of grief about how he's running his bank. That's what I do, all right? I never intended to do that. I didn't go to college to do that. I originally went to college to be an architect and decided I didn't like it. So as part of what I wanted to cover today is, hopefully this is useful to you now. I know a number of you, I think, are freshmen to an extent, so maybe it's not forefront on your mind. But your career is going to go a lot of different ways you're not expecting, right? So to be able to see what's coming a little bit, understanding what your thresholds are, what your capacity is, and the challenges you face, learning that about yourself along the way is extremely important. So I hope I'm going to cover my own career a little bit, and hopefully with that, there'll be some aha moments that I had that maybe they won't shock you when they come up, but we can learn from that. And then I'll talk a little bit about my thoughts on what things I think would be great to be studying now, potential projects you'd be taking on, so things you can learn about that maybe isn't in your classwork, and then even a little bit in the future. And when I talk about the future, I'm probably going to disagree with some of your professors here, but that's okay, about what some of those jobs might look like. Maybe they will agree with me, I don't know. But part of that same disclaimer is I don't speak for Bentley, and I have to say that my views are my own. I don't speak for the Federal Reserve System, Federal Reserve Bank of Boston, or the Board of Governors. So again, I want to be able to cover a bit of my background, go through that, and then get into just some areas that I've seen through a long career, probably about 40 years in IT now, one way or another. Things that I think will be repetitive. You guys are coming to Bentley, you didn't go to tech school, you're probably not looking to be an engineer, you're probably looking to be a leader in the space of information technology. So there's some areas you should probably think about focusing on, because they're going to come up in your future careers. And then again, sort of that forward-looking side. So my background's not particularly exciting. I grew up, like probably a lot of you, locally. I still stay local. I was a first generation to go to college in my family, so there's some, not a lot of insight as to what that was going to look like. I didn't start here, as Mark mentioned. Graduate work was here at Bentley, which I really appreciated, and I'll talk about that in a little bit. But my undergrad was at Wentworth, and it was a combination of living there, commuting, time off, going back. Your path isn't always going to be the one you think it's going to be. Again, when I originally went there, I said it to a few people. I originally planned to be an architect, and then realized very quickly, unlike in high school where you could draw a house and take full ownership of your drawing, I was going to be drawing walls and doing calculations for the next 3 or 4 years, and decided I didn't want to do that. So my next step was tech schools don't always have that undeclared approach that you can take, right? Where I think you can do a couple years before you decide what you want to do. But there was an opportunity to get into what was called then an associate's in physics in the physics department. Went that route, took a course in digital data circuits. Are circuits still taught? Are they taught at Bentley at all? Nothing. So this is basically the core of how a computer works. Ones and zeros through gates, into another gate, right? Down to the infinite, down that smallest level of how a computer thinks, and it hooked me in. If you have the chance to learn that on your own, I would suggest doing it. Again, I went to a tech school, it was about engineering, but it gives you a chance to understand that down to that core level. I think it would be extremely helpful, particularly as you start looking about, well, how the hell does Python work? How are you putting in code that then translates to a computer? And the most important thing, this is my first aha moment. I know at freshman you probably don't have internships, right? But you do have internships at Bentley. Please do that. Most important thing I had from my undergrad at Wentworth was the fact that I was able to put my co-op work on that resume. So it was the MBTA. All I did help desk work, I moved some cables around, but at the end of the day, on my resume, when I left with my bachelor's degree, I didn't have to say I worked at the gas station. I didn't have to say, I was moving furniture. My references, everything I could say we experienced was actual IT experience in the field. So please hunt that down. Try to see different ways you can leverage that. And then I'd say some things that didn't work so well. So got my bachelor's in my first job, and I can give this company grief because they don't exist anymore. Quest Technologies, there's a lot of companies called Quest Technologies. This isn't one of them. These guys are long gone. And I came into the help desk, and where I had a degree and once some experience, they wanted me to come in and eventually lead that help desk. And I think, great idea. I get there, and I very quickly realize the people that are already on that help desk actually want that job I have. And they've been told to get me up to speed to become their future boss. And along with everything else going on with this organization, very toxic environment, okay? When you're going out for your job interviews, do some homework as to what the right questions are to ask about the environment, about what you're getting into. I didn't. This was like one of the first jobs that got back to me, and I said, let's do it, okay? Bad experience, great experience. And this basically sent me down the course of just banking in general, and the rest of my career from that point on was in banking. Cooperative Bank of Concord, again, a company that doesn't exist anymore. Started out with the same thing, help desk, plugging things in. Company was going through a lot of mergers, expansions. Quickly built up my own world within that space and within that company to an IT manager, an AVP, 24/7 coverage, running mergers from the technology perspective, running those acquisitions. Great experience. Had a great time with it. A bunch of other people my age doing all the same things in different departments. Great experience. Bad experience, sometimes it comes with it with the mergers and acquisition side. Sometimes you are getting acquired. All right, so on the bad end of this, then eventually this organization was acquired. So now this was a reset for me. Didn't want to work for the larger company that came in. But had a couple of years to think about what I wanted to do because we still had to keep the lights on and get this company ready for transition. So that's when I decided to go back to school. Came here to Bentley, and this is where I might end up disagreeing a little bit with maybe some of the guidance you're getting, and that's okay, I guess. So how many people have a feeling they're going to go straight through to a graduate school right after this? And please be honest. Okay, a number of people. I don't blame you. Like, you look at the job market now, that make a hell of a lot of sense, right? But I will tell you, when I came back to take courses for Mark and others, Bill Shiano, I heard, is still here. He was teaching at that time. Because I had time in the workforce and that experience, I felt I gained a lot more from that experience in the master's programs. I could relate more to what was being taught. I could pull from that the things I felt I needed to grow. I offered more in that group environment when you had those sessions, right? And the other side of this, and this is another thing I'd say, sort of a learning thing for me, I hated group projects, right? And I look around, freshmen, there's no way any of you really enjoy group projects, because there's always somebody in that group that's not carrying their weight, or somebody that thinks they're in charge of everything, whatever that environment is. I will tell you what the most important part of that project work isn't your deliverable. It's not what you created. It's how you were able to interact in a tough environment, how you were able to work with difficult people, what role you played in that. Maybe not leading, but at least as the individual that can help the group move forward. So when you get those opportunities, I know they can be a drag, but you're going to learn more about, you're going to apply that in the workforce more than you're going to with almost anything else you learn. Okay? So then mid-career. So I never thought I would be an auditor. Okay? I was building things. I was plugging things in. I was designing architectures. I was setting up accounts, getting systems going, routing, servers, the whole thing. But this was a reset moment for me. And I went back to college and felt, you know what, I don't want to be a 24/7 person anymore. That takes a lot out of you. A lot of IT work, even in management roles, you're expected to be available at all times. I decided, okay, audit should be pretty easy, right? No one's going to call me 24/7 if I'm the auditor. And I think Bentley's got a lot of connections to courses to be audit work. accounting or IT and accounting as well. There's usually been a pretty strong connection there. So I figured it would be a nice, relaxing place to be. What I didn't realize, and what ended up working out for me, is within organizations love to pull managers from the audit teams because the auditors know everything about that organization. So if there are opportunities in your careers, I'd say to take that step back, have that overview process or oversight of audit or Q&A, quality assurance. There's a great value to doing that and a great value to the organization you're in, and they will see that ability. So again, quickly going through the rest of my career with the Federal Reserve, very quickly jumping up to other positions to a point where I had 30 plus people. Doesn't sound huge. I know you guys have had some presentations here. I know the gentleman from FIS had massive units that were underneath his wing. But for me, that was a lot, right? And continue to develop with that 24-hour environment. Then I decided to move into an enterprise role. And here's, again, sort of that aha moment for you. Through all of this, I always viewed my ceiling and my capacity for stress or workload or whatever it is as just the job, okay? But somehow in the background here, I got married, I had a family, my parents were aging, all of these other things, this work-life balance stuff people talk about a lot kicks in. And quite honestly, I lost track of if something happened in the real world, not my work life, but my real world, that my capacity would be exceeded, okay? So this needed a real reset for me as to whether or not that point in my life, 24/7 support still made sense. Did I still have that charge capacity and all of that to operate in that space? So again, it was one of those reset moments with a career, and I'm now exactly as I started saying before, I never intended to be a bank examiner. But through this, it was an opportunity for me to take my skill I had in the background of running small banks, IT systems in small and regional banks, leverage all of that, work with small banks on cybersecurity and business resumption and all those key points that they need to work on. Those small banks really struggle sometimes with having those resources for themselves. Work with other talented people. And then again, this is sort of brings my career a little bit full circle as far as being an individual contributor, right? So that's the path. This is where I'm at. I probably got 2 to 3 years left before I'm done with all of it. It's been a long haul. But again, my career really didn't go exactly where I was expecting it to go from the beginning. And when opportunities come up, my suggestion to all of you is try to understand your capacity for different opportunities and the things you thrive in versus the things that create a lot of, extra stress, because understand the rest of your life is eventually going to kick in too. So I don't know if there'd be questions about a career or any of those choices, but I'll look now just in case before we get into, okay. So then I said I wanted to be able to present a couple things to you. One relates to, these are the areas that no matter what I did in IT, I always felt these were sort of that key set of skills and understanding that you should have as a future IT leader. When I go through and examine organizations, if these areas are strong, generally the backbone of everything that's running IT is strong. The IT asset inventory, sometimes if you're in the audit world, this is called the universe, the IT universe of the things you need to review. Understanding that you have everything, hardware, software, interconnections to other systems. Because without knowing that whole piece, you don't know if everything's patched right, you don't know if you've got everything configured correctly. Particularly through mergers and acquisitions, you could have rogue systems, rogue applications installed. Without knowing it, you're only as good as that weak link, so having that all together. You'll hear the term of CMDB. It's a configuration management database where all that information can be stored so that you will also understand which systems connect to what other systems and what business areas are impacted by that. Risk management tools, GRC is generally governance, risk, and compliance tools. There's some different topics on this or different terms that are used for this. enterprise risk management tools. It's about identifying all of the risks you're going to put in place, you're going to take on by running certain businesses and offering certain services, mapping that to the IT control environment. That's going to be on you. If you run IT, if you're an IT leader, that's your business. And then understand that residual risk, measure that residual risk, and ensure that lines up with the strategy of the organization. Data governance, I would say, would be an area that I think you have courses here titled Data Management, which will probably cover a lot of this. It's about understanding the data handling needs, sensitivity and classification. If you have customer data you're handling, if you have sensitive corporate information you're handling, how that gets handled as it's stored on the systems as well as in transit. Are you encrypting that information as it goes across the networks? This will grow even more with data aggregators. This is all the interconnection piece behind when you're sharing financial information from one application or your bank to another, and the APIs that interconnect all of those. And I think you guys have some API courses built into the curriculum that I read. Third-party risk management will remain a massive risk to all of your organizations that you play into. Third-party risk is often talked about in the financial sector. They might call this supply chain risk as well. You guys have probably been watching in the news things coming up about CrowdStrike or other systems where there was a hack at one of these providers, a vendor, which then created an issue for the underlying businesses and the customers of that service. So understanding all that and linking it in to your environment as far as your risk management is important. And the last piece is business continuity planning and disaster recovery. Okay? And so forward-looking wise, it sounds a little silly to talk to you guys about artificial intelligence and quantum computing. I'm sure that's foremost in your minds. I know you have a lot of courses on artificial intelligence. But I would say I'll give you my take a little bit on specific needs within those spaces. And this is maybe where I'll deviate a little bit from maybe what some of the folks at Bentley feel. There was some discussion about Python and programming and application development. I think AI will take on some of those roles, but I don't think it will alleviate the need for people that understanding the programming languages and software development life cycles in general. I just think some of that focus may switch to quality assurance and being able to validate how those programs were written and be able to trace back through them, right? But I think AI will take on any of that opportunity to learn from an existing program and translate it. You got to think that's going to start to take some of that over. The other piece, which I think is the biggest security risk to artificial intelligence, for me anyway, is within the data. All artificial intelligence is going to learn something it's doing from an existing data set, whether or not it's a controlled data set, an open data set. There's always the opportunity for something called noise injection, right? Somebody either not on purpose or on purpose being able to put specific biased data within that set so that they may be trying to influence the outcome of the artificial intelligence piece. And I know in the banking space, financial space, there's a lot of worry in that area. Quantum computing, I am not the expert in this area, and I don't know that it's in a place where it's going to be taught in detail in colleges yet, depending on the college, probably not Bentley. But at least to have an understanding of the impact this would have on an organization, as well as different kind of applications where it might be necessary. One thing I did read as you look at and I kind of agree with this, if you look at artificial intelligence and quantum, is that AI is developing so quickly, and keeping in mind that existing binary computer systems are still advancing, that there is some piece to say some of what we think quantum will do in the future, AI will be able to do it first, even on binary systems. There will still be an environment where quantum's necessary, but it's going to lag based on the development and where it's at today. And the last two pieces, as you're looking at different opportunities or things you might want to pursue, a growing space is what's called a virtual CISO. So this is doing information security officer work, but from in general, a remote standpoint, but across multiple organizations. So organizations that can't afford to bring those skill sets in-house, I'm seeing a lot of growth in the space where these virtual roles are either played by an organization or individuals to be able to provide a slice of their time to each of those organizations they bring on. And at least from my perspective and the amount of time I've had in the Federal Reserve, as well as within banking in general, payments fraud and the impact of crypto and instant payments, I think, is just going to grow. A lot of these tools allow for sort of that fire and forget perspective of where the payments are bound to. There's not a lot of opportunity to catch things before there's potentially a fraud event of some kind. But it is a space that is worth, I think the growth in that area is going to be substantial. And a last pet peeve I guess I'd have, because I get to see a lot of events from community banks, a lot of things that are reported about fraud events. The toughest one for me to read about is something called elder financial exploitation. So this is basically seniors getting a phishing email, getting a phone call or something where they're tricked by a fraudster into releasing their funds or providing access to their systems. How prevalent this is would blow your mind, right? So the information we see in the background, what goes to the FBI and everything else. So if there's anyone with interest in information security or cyber in general, consider that as being part of what you want to do going forward. If I had it to do all over again, I think that would be an area that I'd try to focus on. So, but that's all I have. So hopefully they get maybe a couple of questions.
Let's take some questions about either things you'd like more information about or things that Rob said that struck you in the South West East.
Yeah.
Could you go deeper into your role at the Federal Reserve in Boston, kind of like what the makeup is, the structure, and like how was that?
Sure. So my role in particular, right? So there's a few different roles you probably hear about with the Federal Reserve. There's monetary policy, there's payments, and the area I'm in is supervision, right? So I'll go into community and regional banks, and we'll do examination work on some schedule with those organizations. And I'll go in looking at the overall control environment. So some of the pieces I brought up there, vendor management, which is third-party management, is a big part of it. Cybersecurity in general, that you have your account with Joe's Bank. We want to understand Joe's Bank is doing the right things by you from a safe and secure manner and in controlling that environment. And then there'll be a report written up that goes to their board of directors as far as if there are any things that they need to do differently, from recommendations to matters that require immediate attention.
And so does the Federal Reserve go seek out these companies, or do these banks ask the Federal Reserve to provide the service?
That's good. So you've heard of FDIC, right? So if you have a deposit at a bank, FDIC, federal government, will insure that up to $250,000. There are other things that might happen, but in general, unless the organization you have the money with specifically says they're FDIC insured, then that's what that dollar amount is. FDIC looks at most of those banks. OCC is different. That's nationally chartered banks that they'll look at. But there's a subset of the FDIC banks that become members of the Federal Reserve System. They become member banks, and those are the ones we look at. So in New England, we have about 33, 34 banks that we specifically look at in New England. Yeah, thank you.
What are some of the biggest challenges you faced throughout your career journey?
Some of the biggest challenges you faced in your career?
It's people. I think that's the biggest thing. It's not the interrelation stuff. I think the interrelation stuff you build up. But say, again, there's a room full bunch of people that might become officers or managers, CEOs or CIOs someday, right? To some extent, depending on who you are as an individual, you're going to feel some responsibility for them, their career, their development, and the things that impact them. It's got a strong chance to impact you as well. So I think some of the things that were the most challenging is when you have a workforce and they're going through some, they themselves are having health issues or they have families that are having concerns. It's trying to balance all that along with getting the work done and those kinds of things. That was usually the toughest part for me, and probably why I had certain thresholds that I hit before maybe some others will. So, yeah.
Can you talk a little about how AI has impacted the way you or the banks do work?
Yeah, so my area is primarily community and regional banks now. And there's not a lot going on in that space. I'd say the biggest thing AI is going to be used for those smaller banks today will be customer relations management. So it will be set up in a way phone call comes in or text comes in, something comes in from a customer that generates the need for a response, and AI trying to develop that response in the background to provide to your CRM, so your customer relation management staff, your help desk staff, whatever, to have a prepped answer that makes the most sense based on their buying patterns or different things that different products that they may want. So I think that's the larger space. The part that gets a little more worrying is when AI starts getting used to make decisions about customers for who to give an account to, who to give a loan to, and trying to keep what I mentioned is that bias, try to keep that bias out of the result based on the input. So, and I think there's a lot of challenges in that space from a regulatory standpoint as far as ensuring there's no unintended or intended bias in those results.
You talk about the cyber crimes and like the specific targeting. Do you think that like AI will make it worse and more prevalent, or do you think that it can go?
AI and cyber, is that basically the answer? Okay, I'm sorry, I'm not. So cybersecurity, I think it will be, how many people here are interested in security? I know you're CIS, but how many really want to get into more of a cybersecurity world? Come on, raise your hands, please, because it's so necessary. I think it's always going to be the same thing. It's going to be the good guys chasing the bad guys, and the bad guys will be better at it because there are fewer guardrails for how they create and do what they do. And I think it will create more problems than benefits. I think the other side, the other piece to that, and I started talking about quantum a little bit, and I kind of veered away from it because it's not my area of focus. I think that one's going to get very interesting on encryption, right? You're probably reading a lot about that already, related to the ability to crack certain encryption codes, particularly the public encryption versus private encryption needing to make a step forward. So.
Can you flip this attendance slide over? We'll take a couple more.
There's one more?
We'll take one or two more questions, and Rob's going to put up the QR code for attendance and also the questions we have for you about your take-home message from his talk today. So scan that away, and it'll take time for one or two more questions if you've got one.
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I wanted to follow up with that one. How do you see the government getting involved with like AI regulation?
So I'm going to speak for, and remember my disclaimer, right? So this is me, not the Federal Reserve System. I got to be really careful about that. I hope some level of leadership role, or at least helping to foster the associations and if the industries police themselves, being able to support that. The other side of that would be tearing down all those requirements, which I think is sort of the free market kind of approach, which that worries me a bit. But I think when industry and government agencies have worked together, they're generally the better results. So I'm kind of hoping it goes that way. Yeah.
So you mentioned you were working kind of mostly with FDIC and local kind of regional banks in New England. By any chance, did you happen to work at all with Needham Bank? And the reason I asked that is because they recently IPO'd. What is it like doing an audit for a bank that's going to IPO?
So from a IT perspective, there's no particular difference with it. I think that's outside of the Fed a little bit because that gets into the SEC space, I think. But for us, it's not particularly impactful when that happens, yeah. Yep.
What's your favorite part of your career? Like, how did you get into it, and like, what do you like the most about it?
Well, I was going to be an architect, right? So, The favorite part, this is going to sound stupid. It's for me now, it's being part of what I view the Federal Reserve System as being part of what's providing a public service, right? To be able to, particularly what I do now, going into community banks and regional banks that can struggle. It's tough. Cybersecurity and all those controls are tough, particularly with limited budgets. But to be able to offer that feedback, work with them directly to help keep that environment secure and to support financial stability, that feels pretty good. You know, if you can, I guess it's that stupid, it's that expression, if you do something you love for a career, you never have to work a day. That's crap. You will always be working every day of your life. But it does help a bit to be able to be all in mentally as you're going through some of the more challenging things, I think.
Was there any part of your either Wentworth or Bentley experience that impacted you the most? Or,
It was your class.
no, I don't need to say that.
I would say definitely, even at Wentworth, you know, like I said, you guys are going to hit this. It's like you're all in a different space a little bit as far as even what your capacity is now, as far as when you have those work groups and you have to work with other people. It was the most annoying piece of what you're doing to some extent. But finding common ground, if you're the individual within that group, that you don't have to go swinging at them, you don't have to, you know, raise your voice, but if you can find a way to calmly get everyone on the same page and agreeing to some common direction, find a way to do that. And you're all going to do it differently. I can't tell you how to do it. There's a way I do it. There's going to be a way you do it. But look for those opportunities. Hopefully more courses in Bentley space in the undergrad will start to look at more of that sort of project-based learning stuff, I think. It's huge. Yeah.
What is the biggest takeaway from your career?
The biggest takeaway? I guess I'll go to like the largest project I kind of took on. We went through an entire rebuild, basically, of networking environment and phone system environment. And some of you have seen our building in Boston. It's like the big ugly one that looks like it's made of stainless steel. So throughout that entire organization, just kind of ripping it down to bare bones and building up from scratch all the wiring, the closets, the networks, and all of it. And the moment when I had to go to the CEO, CIOs, and say, we're not ready, we had a schedule, and be willing to say, listen, we're not ready, we need X amount of time to get there. It felt horrible at the time because everything was lined up for it, but knowing it was the right decision and then moving forward with it. Sometimes being honest with people is a lot better than telling them everything's okay. And I think that was a wake-up call to me that, you know, you can still do that. You can still have bad news for people and still be someone they're looking at for the ultimate delivery and the trust of what you're working on. So.
Thank you all for coming, and a big thanks to Rob for coming today, too.